State Representatives Johnathan Newman and Kevin Ritter. Welcome to Message from the House.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we have a repeat guest here with Rep. Ritter, and we have a new guest here with Rep. Newman. I will start by asking you just a little bit about yourself and your district, and we will go from there.
Yeah, so my background is my career has been that of a pastor for 26 years and more in other places, but 26 years at our current church. I'm still an elder there at my church. It's in Troy, Miami County, so my district is District 80, which is Miami County and southern Darke County. Our kids grew up there, so education is big on my heart and mind. It was my first ask for a committee. So I'm glad to be on the Education Committee and glad to be addressing this bill and others with Representative Ritter, because everybody knows what is shaping the hearts and minds of our children is going to shape the future of our country and the world. And so it's a big deal to me. So in our church, there are a lot of homeschoolers, a lot of people asking for direction and guidance on how to educate their children. And so I'm happy to be a part of that for people in the district and my church, but also here in the State House.
And I will ask, what prompted or inspired you to run for office?
Yeah, so, one of the questions people ask me often is, well, Pastor, do you feel like your calling has changed? And my answer is always, not at all. My calling is to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness in all things. And so I've done that throughout my career as a pastor, and now I hope to do that to seek truth and uphold good as a legislator.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for kicking it off. Today, we are here to talk about House Bill 326, which was passed by the House. I want to just leave it broad and ask you guys to explain what this bill is and why you both felt it was important. Rep. Ritter, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, the classic learning test was developed about 10 years ago, developed in response to the feeling of a number of folks that ACT and SAT had deviated from their previous standards. And the CLT is the number one test being used by homeschoolers and private schoolers around the country. That doesn't mean it's exclusive to those groups. There are over 100,000 kids in the state of Florida in public school taking the CLT. But it's an attempt to capture a population that doesn't feel like their achievement is being well represented by the current choices.
Very interesting. Rep. Newman?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I'm very happy to join Rep. Ritter on this bill. So I did not grow up even knowing what classical learning was. I grew up in the country. We didn't know. But as we homeschooled our own children, I began to learn about this and discover the value of classical learning. And so there's great value there. But there's also an appreciation that I have, and I think many have, that there isn't only one way to educate a child. There are many ways to educate. And I think what this bill does is give parents options and encourage options. I think as Americans, we don't like the idea of the government picking and choosing winners, picking and choosing how parents should think is the best way to educate their children, that invisible hand that directs the course behind the scenes. We as Americans enjoy liberty and freedom. So I think what this does is it encourages parents to exercise their options and discover classical education. And those who have chosen that path, that choice is reflected in the university. So I think there's a lot of good reasons for this. I hope it will move forward in the Senate and be signed into law. I think it's a good idea for Ohio.
So how did you both learn about this, or how did it come up that, hey, this could be a really good opportunity? Because it seems a little niche if you're not familiar with it.
Yeah, I was involved in the launching of a classical school in my town 12 years ago now, 2014. So I did a lot of research at that point. Probably the biggest purveyor of ideas on classical education is Hillsdale Academy in Michigan. So I went up and visited multiple times, met with faculty up there, really got an understanding of what it was they were trying to do. And classical education is not different from the way that your grandparents were taught. We've strayed from that model, but it's something that worked very, very well in Western civilization for over 2,000 years, and we're simply looking to return to that model.
So it's very interesting that in our generation, today's times, many people have never even heard of this.
Yeah.
When I bring it up and talk about it, parents, they're asking, what is this? But among some circles, this is a preference. So when my wife and I got married and began talking about having children and how we'd educate our children, our friend group, were all talking about this. And our friend group was shifting toward classical education. And so currently in our church, there are a number of homeschoolers. There are 2 homeschool groups that use our facility for a co-op. One of those is Classical Conversations. It's a homeschool group that fosters classical learning. My family was asked to help start a classical school in a county near us. Actually, my daughter was asked to be the headmaster, and I said, "You're only 19. I don't think that would work." But I'll ask her. I'll tell her to come get some advice from Rep Ritter here. But I think it's something that is spreading, but it's something that's really old that we've lost. It's how our founding fathers were educated. It's emphasizing reading the classics, reading the things that educated the founding fathers. So I think there is a value there to, returning to what America is and what our Constitution is built upon. And so there's so many reasons I want more parents to know about this.
And if you could briefly describe what is classical learning in your own words?
Yeah, classical education respects the individual student as the creation of a loving God. It doesn't see that student as simply material, a raw material to be shaped for the workforce. The purpose of classical education is to pass down from the generations before us all the learned, all the wisdom that we've gathered as a people over the centuries. Our job as educators, we see in the classical community, is to pass that knowledge on to the rising generation.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that background. That really helps as we kind of work through this bill. A big part of it was kind of piecing together how colleges and universities in Ohio will, work with different testing forms and different learning styles. Talk me through how you all had to work that out within the bill language. Will they be accepting, these different testing styles and such?
Everybody resists change, but I think this is a change that's going to be easier to take. Basically, what the bill says, Olivia, is if you're a public institution and you accept ACT or SAT, you also have to accept CLT. Again, because it's the number one test being used by communities that are choosing not to take the other 2. The reason I think it's going to be easier for the public institutions to accept is they can use it as a tool to recruit out-of-state students. Think of homeschoolers in Michigan and Indiana, all across the nation. If they're taking this test and we accept this test, that's a powerful tool to bring kids to Ohio to be educated.
I think it's a great asset for Ohio universities. I agree 100%. It's a great way to draw talent to Ohio. Maybe those students will stay in Ohio, build their business here, build their career here. And if you look at the shift that's happening in our country, there's a great recognition on the part of parents that they want their child to be educated in a way that is in line with the freedoms and history of our nation and what made our country what it is. And so I know those in my circles are choosing that path, not just homeschooling, but specifically classical education, because it addresses a student as a whole person, not just as a worker bee, not just educating the student to pass the test, but to help them embrace a lifetime and love of learning, a love and understanding of the virtues, of beauty, of the classics, and of understanding that they're made in the image of God. I think our education system in Ohio and our country has done too much to try to divorce learning from God. And so this is simply a recognition of who our children are, who people are. And if you'd like a good description and promo or exposure to classical education, I would commend to you this book, Battle for the American Mind by Pete Hegseth and David Goodwin. Great book. You know who Pete Hegseth is. So before he was the Secretary of War, he was promoting classical education and wrote this book. Now, as Secretary of War and a member of the administration, he and others have helped get classical learning tests in our military academies. So our military academies are now accepting the classical learning test. I think is a good example to lead the way for other institutions to follow.
Thank you so much. I will definitely have to read it just because I'm myself curious about the CLT. I was a horrible ACTer I won't reveal my score. I want to ask on the topic of parents and educators, what feedback have you gotten about this bill?
We heard from a lot of parents when we were initially drafting the bill, folks that are in the communities that I mentioned, the homeschoolers, the private schoolers, but also public schoolers that wanted a test that they thought would reflect their achievement in a way that it wasn't being recorded. So we had a lot of conversations with families about this bill. Thankfully, there are a number of other states that use the CLT, so we had some background that we could draw upon. We were aware of the success stories. We know where it's being utilized. One of the other things about the CLT is it's very strong in the minority community. Over 20% of the students who took the test last year were African American. So it's hitting a demographic that maybe some people would be surprised by.
That is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And then, on the topic of maybe some scrutiny, how did you work towards, preserving the integrity of the college admission process and, any type of apprehension about that? So working with this bill, adding a new test option, was there any worry or pushback that this might, jeopardize that integrity?
Sure. Well, we did hear some of those questions that, won't this test represent a lowering of standards?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think so. I think when you look at the families and students who are choosing classical education, what you see is a return to excellence and high standards. So I think it's the reverse of what we heard in the concerns of those who asked. Another question that we received was, aren't entrance exams a bad reflection of knowledge? Aren't these exams just, because maybe students don't do so well on exams? Well, that's a fair question to ask, but I think the classical learning test gives a good option to the ACT and SAT to a different style of learning, which is a different way to reflect knowledge and understanding and reasoning, which I think on the whole is a better way to test knowledge or test a student's accomplishments. What do you think?
That's something we should probably make clear, Olivia, is that the bill does not mandate that colleges only utilize these tests. So parents can still go through, there are many pathways that you can get into college these days. Parents can certainly sidestep the test option if they don't like that for their child.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I like that you mentioned that it's going to make us more competitive and more open with, more options for people, hopefully drawing more students to Ohio because of the openness. So that was a very good point. The last point I will ask or make about this bill in specific, as it does head to the Senate, what is one thing that you would like people to understand about the long-term impact of this bill on Ohio students?
We've already talked about it, and I think it's the ability to draw kids who may never have thought about going to college in Ohio. As my joint sponsor said, we know that when kids come to school here, they tend to stay here. And that's the community that we want to stay here, right? The highly educated, the highly motivated. We want access to those kids by accepting this test, and then we want to keep them once they're here.
Absolutely.
Very good. I like that. I think another long-term concept is the idea of competition. I think what classical education, homeschooling, Christian or other private schools have done is they've provided many options to parents. There's not just one way to educate your child. It's presented options. It's also presented competition. I think this is what our public school system needs. I should have said this at the outset. Where I'm from, in our district, we have really good schools. People want to live. Matter of fact, our county is one of the few counties in the state that is growing. And part of the reason Miami County is growing is because we have really good schools, public schools. So I just want to say our public schools are doing a really good job. However, we also have a very strong and growing community of homeschoolers in the same county. And so I think what this does is it presents to public schools a way to grow and improve. I have no doubt there are teachers in our public schools who know what classical education is and would love to see our public schools embrace that. So I think introducing this CLT test and promoting classical education on the whole might lead to our public schools embracing this. I would love to see that.
That is a really good point, and I think a great way to kind of conclude talking about HB 326 for now. I want to open up the floor. You know, it's a busy time here in Columbus and beyond. Any other bills that you both are working on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, let me add one more thing to what my colleague just said, and it just came to mind. T.S. Eliot, the great poet, said we need many different kinds of education for many different kinds of people. And that's a model that I think we're already embracing in Ohio. I think it's something that we can do even better. As to other legislation, the two of us just testified in the Finance Committee this morning about House Bill 583. We're calling it the database bill. There are curated databases that the state of Ohio pays for with public dollars that are available in the public schools and in the public libraries. Curated in the sense that when we receive these databases, they should not have age-inappropriate material for kids. What we're finding is over time, things are seeping in, and they're seeping in because there's a profit motive for the vendors to allow that information to get in. Well, it's happening too often. So what 583 does is it establishes a three-strike policy. The vendor can cure at each step. So if that information gets through and it's seen by someone, they're caught, but they have a right to cure. They can cure 3 times. If it happens a 4th time, then we're not going to use that vendor anymore in the state of Ohio. We want to ensure that our kids are seeing that curated material that you'd feel comfortable having in your own home.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm very thankful that this bill is happening. I'm very happy to partner with you on that bill as well. Thank you for that opportunity. Another bill that we are joint sponsoring is the school chaplaincy bill. It is being heard in committee today for proponent testimony in the Education Committee. And I think this is really interesting what's happening. A number of other states have either introduced or passed, 4 states have passed the school chaplaincy bill, not to mandate, not to require, but to allow school districts to utilize volunteer chaplains. One of the things we hear in Education Committee and in school districts and meetings that we have in our districts is the growing need for emotional support or support of students facing mental health challenges. And our schools simply can't hire enough counselors to address all those needs. And so what the school chaplaincy bill does, it gives another resource for schools, students, and faculty to help support students. Students aren't required to see the chaplain. Actually, parental consent is required for a student to go see a volunteer chaplain. School districts aren't required to have chaplains, but if they choose to, and I know some of the school districts in Rep. Ritter's district and schools in my district in rural America, rural Ohio, love this idea, and other places across the state. They would love to see, someone in their own community who is a clergy member, maybe a youth minister or a pastor, that the students know already. The faculty of the school know this chaplain, that the parents would love to see access to that kind of support in the schools. And so we're looking forward to see how this bill moves forward. I think it will. And I think it just gives our schools another way to support our students and point them to, a bright future.
Yeah, and another one that is moving forward quickly is the bill that you are sponsoring with Rep. Marilyn John. Do you want to quickly talk about that one as well?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. 507, HB 507 is on the floor today for vote. What that bill will do is will help law enforcement get more human sex traffickers off the streets. So this bill came to us from the Attorney General's office.
Oh, wow.
It's something that the attorney... So here's what I say on the floor today. Ohio is first in a lot of ways. We were first in flight, first on the moon. First to use the barcode scanner in my hometown with a piece of gum at Marsh grocery store.
Wow.
A package of gum was scanned for the first time. Even the first hot dog. But Ohio is dead last on this law. Every other state in the union has this law. It would change our law to say that if money or anything of value has been exchanged through prostitution, if another person receives that money or thing of value, that person is the trafficker. That person currently cannot be charged with a crime for receiving that money or thing of value. Our law would change that. That person will be charged with a felony. So the Attorney General wants this so that we can charge and prosecute more human traffickers. And I think the bill will pass today on the floor. Next is getting the Senate to pass it. The House has sent this bill to the Senate in the past, in 2022. And for some reason, it didn't go any further. So we hope this year the Senate will pass the bill.
Well, wonderful. We'll definitely have to watch and see. Quickly, I'm going to talk about our social media. You all can follow us on the Ohio House GOP Caucus on Facebook, Ohio House _GOP on Instagram, and OHR GOP Caucus on Twitter. You can subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. I feel like I learned so much, and that was a really good conversation. So
Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you.
Great to be here with you today.